Hello, this is George Sandmann. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show.
Well, ways we are. So what's on everyone's mind this morning? iPhone 44. Good. Do we know who that is?
Hey, George, I have a question for you. How are you? How's everyone? So, George, remember, I was asking you about like guidance on, when you get into those Clarity 2 questions, right? And so when I'm in an engagement now where I've gotten to the deep dive section, and I want to share, before I have the session with the 5 C-level leaders to go through those questions, I wanted to give them the questions and then also give them what a yes answer or what a yes answer would look like for those particular questions. So in other words, if you meet this, that means you are doing this. So it clarifies the question so they understand it instead of us, because when I've done it without doing that, we get into questions about what do you mean by that question? What does that mean and stuff like that. So I'm trying to expedite this session. With that said, is there something somewhere where that answer lies within the plethora of resources that you provide?
Mike, I swear you and I are like have some kind of mind meld. So short answer, yes, and I'm about to show you. And longer answer, do you remember when you said you were doing a deep analysis and your clients were struggling with, okay, we have the best practice and we have the worst, but what does partly true mean? And as I recall, you related that it was taking a lot of time with them discussing what partly true might be. As healthy an exercise that is, so there's 2 parts to your answer. One, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay with everyone. Share there. Here we go. I'm in the community and I just searched for checklists. Okay. The search is your sanity, guys. A lot of people are like, I can't find it. Just search. And I scroll down to the Dimension 1 checklist. Now let's see if this resource meets your needs. And then I'm happy to show you something else. Get your checklist here. Let's see what happens. All right. So
no, I got that, George. That's fine. Those are the questions, right?
Okay. So you need 1 level. Got it.
Right. That's fine. But then let's take the first thing. The stockholders, I can't read it, have defined. Okay. So answering yes to this question
means that it's true and we can document. This is the next iteration of level 2 that we are going to release through the software. I've also asked Catherine this morning to create a checklist for Dimension 1 that we will share with you guys. So what we've done is, rather than saying partly true and not really, we say, goals exist, but they lack full documentation. Goals are informal and rarely communicated or not true. Mike, I'm happy to share this. This is the best practice, true and we can document. Now, if you're looking for guidance on, if we want to get a little more nuanced, we can jump into Clarity. We'll just go into my demo. I'm just going to reports here, move all of your smiling faces and go into Ridge.
While you're bringing that up, I love the more specific answers rather than mostly true, partly true, not true, right?
Which is super, Eric, thank you. And when we're having Clarity level 1 and we're doing discovery, we want to get some context. We want to get the client talking. So partly true gives us the opportunity to say, well, why might that be partly true? But Eric, and I should pause and say, why does having more detail appeal to you?
But again, Michael's point on, I want them to read it and understand what we're really looking for is that it helps them understand the array of choices, right? I fit at 3, not at 2 or at 4 because of this, right? Because they don't necessarily understand the pulling that thing apart to, it's not a yes or no question. There's gray in the middle, right? And once you get into the gray, a lot of clients, just like they think their business is worth more, they'll overestimate the accuracy or the value of their process or whatever. And so being able to clarify and saying, yeah, that's great that you have a process. Show me the document. It's not documented. Great. So you're a 3, not a 4, right?
So it's also annoying to take an assessment when you don't understand the answers, or when it doesn't feel like there's an answer that works for you. I'll take the time to take a quiz or an
From a
assessment.
client standpoint,
None of these apply to me. Or if you're doing a deep dive with the senior leadership team and you've got some generic answer, like mostly true, that could be interpreted 4 different ways by 4 different people.
For sure.
I'm with Eric. The specific answers that people would see similarly is going to be so helpful.
Yeah, it just helps you get to, George, I don't think it takes away from your point that you want to have them expound on it, right? You can still drill into it with a little more clarity in the answer, but it gives a hook to hang your hat on for why you're a 3, not a 2. Otherwise, it's just us, Tim's 3 is my 2, and, you're all over the place.
Yeah. And yes, and we want to capture that, but that's a separate conversation. Mike, I want to make sure. So guys, let's come bookmark that for a sec. I want to make sure I answer Mike's original question.
Yeah.
So if Mike, if you go into execute guidance, even if you haven't completed level 2, it's here, right? So let's take that first one. Shareholders have written time-bound goals for the business, which are shared with the senior leadership team. Answer happened to be mostly false. But if we cruise over here to guidance and I click on guidance, this starts guiding how we would get to true. And what did we just say? The answer was true, and we can document, Now, what does that document look like? What will we have done? What can we manifest? And that would be that we have a business goals with an attainment date for each goals that are shared with the senior team. That is what the best case is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's what I do. I tell them to answer this question at the top level. Yes, we have it. This is what it has to look like. I give them that. And then we can go from there. If they can't say that, then it goes to partially true, that we don't have it, blah, blah, blah.
George, can you bring that up again, though? Implied in there is if you've transferred those to the senior leadership team, they must be written. So if they're not written, you're not meeting the goal, right? You could have said but right, again, that's where I think, guys, this is where I think the more clear we can be, just not doing everything but without them written is not a 4, it's a 3, right? I'm just using a number, right? And it's a 2 if they're not written and you haven't identified all the goals or whatever, right? Like, no. I think we're all saying the same thing. The more clarity we can get around what is included in perfection, the more you can check the boxes and say, hey, there's 3 or 4 criteria in here and you've only met 2 of them. So clearly you can't be a 4. You can't be true. Now let's go down to where you are, right?
And Eric, to underscore your point, imagine we could say to a client, I'd love your feedback. The bottom line is if you were sitting across, we're looking at a high strategic capacity, the capital markets perspective on your business. This is an independent and very important future view of your business. And if you had to sit across the table and say, yes, we have goals for the business, they're written, they have a date, and we've communicated, and the senior leadership team is aligned with them, right? That alignment has other implications. That you need to be able to sit across the deal table and regardless of scenarios, that is like our most valuable, can be our most valuable exit. May not be the most attractive.
Yeah.
But
so George,
communicate and down the list. Go ahead.
So I'm sorry. Can you show me exactly how to get to that spot again?
I got to move I'm
on the site itself. Do I go? Is it in a particular report, or where do I go?
Guidance. If you open up your client, here, I'll go back one. I'm going to move us over here.
Is it dashboard or is it report?
So if you just log into your dashboard.
Okay, got it.
Client you want. So I want to look at Ridge. Whoa, coffee almost went over the edge there. Yes, we actually drink coffee during the coffee Klatsch. Thank you, Steve. And if you go to execute guidance here.
Okay, hold on a minute. I'm way at it. Hold on. I don't know what the hell happened here. Boy. Dashboard, is it the regular, I start analysis? I'm sorry to be so.
You're right here. Mike, can you see my screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we're here. Just click on total.
Lead generation or start on which one?
Just dashboard.
Click on your dashboard. You see where my mouse is on total reports or reports in the left hand?
Got it.
Click on reports. I'm then going to search for the company I want because I have a bunch in here. I know that this is the analysis I'm looking for. And then all you're going to do is click on the execute guidance module. And when you're inside any client, let's say we were looking at the range of value reports, you have your
Click on there.
Your nav is up here. Guidance. And just a refresher.
No, George, I apologize. I was frozen there. Go to the dashboard again. I didn't follow you. Sorry.
No problem, man.
I apologize for being so dense.
No problem.
So where is it over here that I need to go? Go back to dashboard. Go ahead. Where now?
Reports on the left side.
Okay, got it.
Click on it.
Got it.
You should see a list of all your clients.
Got it.
All your reports, I should say. It's more than, and then you're gonna, for example, you have one where you have nine different reports. I'm gonna pull up Ridge, which is our test case here, and then I'm scrolling to the right.
I don't have Ridge, but
no, you don't have Ridge, but you just pick any old client and you just click on the execute guidance button.
okay, hold on.
One of the two blue items.
Okay, I got it. All right, I picked that one, and then over to the right, it says, "Where's?" Okay, I'm here. Go ahead. What do I go next? Sorry.
Click on the execute guidance button.
Execute guidance. Got it. Okay, cool. All right, got it. All right, so then over here, I see the different items, and then I go the guidance button, right? And the guidance. Yep. Okay, got it. All right, thank you for
putting some hyperlinks between. We're starting to.
Got it.
George, a lot in here. So we're starting to hyperlink, but I don't want to cause more confusion. I don't want people to get lost. So now we've kept it very like I'm here and I need to go there. But we're going to start linking the modules together. First, you'll see some other things. Steve Duke and Mike, that answered your question, right?
Thank you so
Beautiful.
much.
Steve, man, how are you?
I'm adequate. Hey, just for recording purposes, everyone else is closer to the microphone than you are.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was not. Okay. I didn't know that it was on the Yeti. My mistake. This is what happens when I come.
You have a voice for radio.
I have a face for radio.
Hey,
Okay.
just comically, I just shared back to our point about what's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, right? I sat in front of a client one day and I asked them, hey, you just told me this is a procedure. Is it documented somewhere? And the answer I got was, yeah, 5 years ago, I sent out an email to everybody telling them what it was, right? And so, again, I point this out in all seriousness, guys. People will answer your question if you say, is it documented? He would have answered, yes, it's documented. He sent out an email and he thought that was documented, right? And it's why we got to pull it apart more and you got to ask more questions and understand what do you mean by that? I don't see it in the 3-ring binder that you're showing me. You got to ask why enough times to understand what, and I almost laughed at him, right? Like, really? 5 years ago, the email, you think that everybody remembers that? Because you're the only one.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating, Eric. And Greg Maddox, this is a conversation you and I have had several times. We have inside Growth Drive. We have in a Google Drive, we have documents and videos on how to do much of what we do. Now we're busy doing a refresh because I'm onboarding someone new and I'm asking her, is this helpful? Now a lot of it is, and some of it we're redoing, but having your client, if you have time, having your client say, we need to have people when they're going to do something. How do we start creating? And Greg, I know you have specific thoughts on this. How do we start creating an operator's manual for the business? It's super healthy. Greg, man, thoughts?
Yeah, it's in the smaller companies, they just don't usually have a fully baked transferable operating system. And oftentimes it seems overwhelming. So you usually find out when they're hiring a new person, like, oh, well, what's your onboarding plan? And they're like, well, they're going to shadow me and then they're going to shadow Susie and they're going to wait in a conference room for a while and hopefully I get there. So if we help them map that out, they're like, okay, well, you're going to have to teach them all this stuff, right? Like, it's not documented. You don't have an LMS set up to just put them on autopilot. So you're going to have to, you or someone on the team is going to have to show them. So why don't we just record that while you show them? You could be shoulder to shoulder and just do a Zoom recording, even though they're not on the other end remote. Set the expectation that, hey, I'm going to walk you through how to do this particular thing. I want you to take notes. I'm going to record it. You're going to get access to the recording. You're going to have some time afterwards where I want you to then take and put together either a checklist or some type of a process flow that you feel makes sense to you based on this, that you would be able to do this without my direct intervention. And they'll get it about 70% right when they bring it back to you. You can easily tweak the last little bit, which to me is get it 80% and ship it. And then and now,
by the way, your wisdom there, 80%.
And then now I've got a recording from time I was going to spend anyway. I've got a tool that they helped create, so they'll have more buy-in to actually use it. Will it necessarily be the one that I scale across that, role? I don't know, but you never know. If we're hiring right, you might find just some gems in there from people who are, smarter than you at that thing. And you've got tunnel vision for the way you've done it forever. And someone comes in with some fresh eyes and you're like, holy crap, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I've had clients push back, oh, geez, so I'm going to hire somebody. And then like, all right, by the way, your first job is to build the training for the job I'm hiring you for. Like, well, I probably wouldn't position it that way. I'd position it the way I just did, 60 seconds ago. And nobody pushes back on that. Like, oh, great, you're going to show me how to do it. You're going to record it so I have access to that later. Oh, you're going to want me to present back to you what I heard and how my notes or checklists or whatever's appropriate for that thing. And now I'm just creating assets. It's guerrilla warfare. We don't have to be corporate America, totally polished. I need to hire a video crew with professional edits and all that kind of stuff. I think people get too hung up on some perceived level of professionalism in the end product when it's just the content. It's just the knowledge. And is it done in a way that's engaging, meaning somebody could find it easily, use it to move the needle and get back to work with minimal down or transfer time. That's what engagement means in this context to me.
Greg, hey George and everyone, it's Larry.
Hey Larry.
I'm not on video, I'm in transit here. Great conversation. Just kind of connect some dots. I'm glad, Mike, you brought that up in terms of getting more granular for all the reasons, Eric, you were talking about with each question. I know it's a lot of work, George, but when we get there, allow our clients to better understand what they do as it lines up to each question within the 4 answers. And then the next part of that is the art of what we do, which is then recognizing, Eric, what you were saying, asking the good facilitative questions. So great, they check off absolutely it's documented, but it was an email 5 years ago. So we need to be really good to know what questions to say, to share more about that documentation. How often is it used? In what way is it used? How is it used, is Greg, to your point, for onboarding? When was the last time it was updated? Anyone else in the room, do you find that that documented process still works, or does it need to be updated?
Yeah.
So if we could capture possibly, George, over the course of the next few months, facilitative questions, we could really advance the art of what we do.
Yeah.
You could start with show me. Oh, it's documented. Great. Show me.
Yeah.
How long does it take them to find it?
Snyder famously says, I'm going to ask you what's going on. And then, in a Reagan-esque sort of way, I'm going to trust and verify. And it's the verify part that we often skip. Okay, there's a document for this. Show it to me. I want to see the document. And when they produce the email, they go into their email and go searching for it, and it takes them 5 minutes to find it. And then they finally print it out. You go, that's not really good, right? The fact that you couldn't put your hands on it in 30 seconds is a problem.
Absolutely right. Savannah.
First of all, Greg, it's a pleasure to meet you. I don't think we have crossed paths. So I really appreciate what you were talking about. And everything you and Larry and everybody else is saying are very important. I like the questionnaire part because it helps the community be more standard, up to 80%. And then everybody else then can put their own flavor and their own energy and juju around what they do, how they do. However, if we're building a practice, it makes sense for us to have some sort of baseline. The question that came to my mind as I was listening about the conversation, though, is that there is the part where we are trying to figure out, how do we pick apart their answers and how do we tell them what the measurement of their answers means to them and everything else. But then you started talking about the guerrilla videos and everything else. And to me, that is the doing, that is the fixing, that is not the assessment, advisory, or coaching. And so I guess the question I had is, in your practice, Greg, how do you do it? Because I'm trying very hard to be very clear what hat I'm wearing on and what's covered under what. And so sometimes it's very easy to bleed in from one to another. And I'm curious to know how it's working in your practice.
Yeah, so if I understand the question, to me, those two are not that disconnected. To everybody's point earlier, it's just so the way I was describing it, I could do during the assessment because this is just my way for that particular example of showing them what guidance is, from, the
I
clarity
see.
thing, right? So I'm just painting a picture for them about what it could look like. It's true. Sometimes people just don't know, like, what does that mean? Or they haven't done it before, so they have no real context. And a generic,
I see.
formalized, type of blurb might not resonate. So sometimes you got to kind of story tell a little bit around it. I'm not sure if that answered your question, Lana.
No,
Like
it
we
does.
have our own version of Clarity One, if you will, and then some other tech stack that we've developed. That gets us a foot in the door and is a launch pad for us on how we then kind of identify gaps and then work with them to build out a strategic plan and start executing it. We're very big into building the transferable operating system with them or helping them find the tools and resources so that this is the kind of stuff that moves the enterprise value up. Also,
No, it
the
makes a lot of
third-party tools
sense.
out
So
that
we're
help with
talking
that.
about degree.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, totally. And so I just in my brain, our flow is a little bit different. You could use the same way that we do it with Clarity, but our flow is slightly different. And so there's an assessment phase on the front end. We are validating and verifying, but then we move into building a plan and execution pretty quickly.
Excellent.
I
So
think go on, so on.
I was going to say, just to recap, so I understood it correctly, it's a matter of degree on which you go in depth. Because part of my concern was there are certain activities. I run a $10 million company. Everything we're talking right now, I started from scratch and started building it and so on. So all those activities to me are verticals that require an in-depth skill set. And so as a growth advisor and coach, if we go in that depth, then we are going away from the advising and coaching and into developing. And I was just trying to figure out in your practice, where does the advisory and coaching end, or at least pauses for a moment, and you say, I need a subject matter expert that comes there, or I need somebody dedicated to just put the 10-page document that comes here. That's all.
I'd
Go
love
ahead.
to hear everyone's perspective. That is I was discussing this with Garrison this morning, this exact point with Garrison. Guys, chime in, please.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your direct question, we stay advisory. We do help on executing. We are huge at bringing in subject matter experts. Sometimes that could be they're part of the team already. They work for either, an employee of or an existing advisor to, or sometimes they need help from our ecosystem of finding that right resource and we bring them to the table. So it's a blend. I've just got my approach to how I do the same thing that you do. Sounds like you like to have it a little bit more delineated, and I'm comfortable with it being a little bit more meshed.
I'm very comfortable of mashing back and forth, but having been in many situations where I can easily wear multiple hats, what I find out is people have a hard time identifying what hat am I wearing on if I'm not very clear about it. And I think that's what I've learned from over the years, that it makes a lot of sense to be very clear about managing those expectations. That's the only one. But I appreciate it, and I'd love to get together separately and learn more about it and see what we can exchange.
Anytime.
Ed, you were saying something. Sorry, please go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that Larry brought up, and that is when you're doing the clarity questionnaire, one of the things that I find, and that is interacting with the individual, completing the questionnaire with the different line options, just discussing the option as opposed to letting them read it and pick an answer. I always interact and cause the challenges and questions and thinking on it and say, no, this really means something like this. In your organization, do you ever do anything like that? Or do you do something less, or do you do more? and it's like recurring revenue. Well, some people understand recurring revenue means it's got to be from the same customer. And I'm saying, well, recurring revenue means that you can predict that it's going to happen. It may not be the same customer time in and time out. So just clarification and amplification. I think that's why I don't see getting through the clarity questionnaire in 15 minutes. It takes me a half hour to 40 minutes usually, because I want to talk and interact, and I learn more about the business while we're doing that than if I only just let them answer the questions, and then I don't really know anything other than I got answers.
Absolutely, Edmund. Yes, and especially using clarity level 1. Thank you. Tim, fire away. Guys, you don't have to raise your hands, just pounce in.
Yeah, so I haven't done this in the context of Growth Drive, but I've done it in my own advisory practice. And I think you have an item in your early training that plays to this, where you talk about the 5 roles.
Yes.
So what's the first one? The talker, the teller, then there's the teacher,
Yep.
the
Educator.
advisor, the educator, the general contractor, and the implementer, right?
Architect.
Architect, right. When you're talking with your client in the first place about the proposal, you say, look, I can play any of these roles. My primary role is this as advisor. Ahead of that, we'll be doing some education, then step into an advisory role. And that's what this proposal includes, right? There are going to be times when I may be helping you gratuitously with X, Y, or Z. But if we get into this, if it's right for me to, or if you want to, I'm kind of playing to the whole group here, then all we'll do is we'll make an adjustment to the proposal or to our agreement. You don't want to give the impression that they got to feed the meter every time you're going to help them out. I think everybody here would, Greg and everybody else would do what you can. But if it starts to look like it's leaning that way, or they have no other resource but you, then you're certainly say, remember when I showed you that? Like, I can do that, or I can't do that. Let's bring somebody in. And I don't know if that helps, but I think that document.
Tim, that is a great point. And those 5 are talker, educator, architect, general contractor, fractional. And in this community, we are by and large educators, architects, and general contractors with a fractional as well represented. Let's drill in on that point, Tim. So let's take Eric. Eric is advising a CEO on an exit plan. And Eric has a background as a CPA. Steve could act as the fractional CFO. Okay, could. Now that's changing their role. Now imagine this. Let's look at it from the client's perspective. Eric, Steve, and lots of other people, Anna in this community, could also do the bookkeeping. Now, do you pay $10,000 a month for a bookkeeper? And how has taken on not just the subject matter expertise, but we have people who have gotten into doing, but like actually doing the task, like, forget it, it's easier for me to just fix your books. That changes in what I've heard back from you guys for a decade and a half here, almost a decade and a half, is that when you do that, you just it's like a drowning person pulling you under, and your value, the amount of time you have to invest goes up, but the value per hour drops, and it tends up mucking up or gicking up, as I like to say, the relationship with the client, because they stop understanding where you're supposed to be sitting in the co-pilot seat with the map saying steer left. And the minute you're out shoveling coal into the furnace, it's kind of changed how they see you. Does that resonate? Greg, I see you nodding your head up and down.
Yeah. And it also forces an early end to an engagement, because they'll inadvertently or unavoidably, they'll get to the point where they feel if you just want to put the Superman cape on and do everything for them, you're going to accomplish a lot of things that they don't really know how to implement, even though you've built a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And so at some point, they're going to feel overwhelmed, like, oh my God, you've been amazing. This is great, but I got so much stuff to work on now. Like, we're a subscription-based, annual contracts, monthly retainer. Before that, we were 6 months. So you get to the end of 6 months, if that's the way you did it, you get a lot of people timing out. Oh, this is awesome. I'll be back once I catch up. And they never catch up. We're also doing them a disservice, because your job, I feel our job, is to make them better, not do it for them. So that could be helping level up their team. Could be identifying other resources that they can bring in, not necessarily us doing, for them, even if we can help guide their approach with tools and frameworks. That's different than just saying, like a typical consultant, like, all right, I gathered the data. Let me go backstage. I'm going to build all this amazing stuff, and I'm going to land it on your desk later. And I think that's just short-lived in our world. You'll feel good in the moment. They'll feel good because you've solved a couple rocks in the shoe. It's not long-term, has been our experience over the past 10 years.
I'm going to go back to the goal of the meeting is to get the agreements and then highlight the area of conflict, right? So we're trying to identify where we're in conflict and where we're not, there's no resolution required here. What we're really trying to do is get them to understand we can go into the danger zone with the team that they can't go by themselves, or they refuse to go by themselves. So we got to be able to be that person that can go into the danger zone and help them get through it, because until they go through that conflict, they're never going to get on the other side of this growth that they're idled with, whatever issue they got going on. So I think we're trying to accomplish too much from that meeting, trying to get granular on what it means to this and this. The important thing is to have discussion and get to the next phase, which will build out those items of importance. You know, this could be, you have a big dialogue about something that's not even germane to the immediacy of the issues, and we're getting way off track. So I'm for less detail and more general conversation, agree to disagree, move on, versus just sitting on that particular the 28 questions and get lost in the detail.
You know, it's interesting, Joe. You know, you've just, and thank you. And I could not help but take an Archer reference to Danger Zone and post it in the chat. So I apologize. Just having a little fun in the morning. But Joe, you highlight a fantastic point. You know, there's a difference and that's, you know, what you'd see play out if you had, you know, if you're stuck inside my brain. You know, we have a discovery phase, and in discovery, you're absolutely right. We'll go into the danger zone and we'll highlight areas of disagreement. In an alignment workshop, an alignment report can highlight those areas of disagreement or different perspectives on capacity, strategic capacity. But in an alignment workshop, then we're going to wade right into the arena and put dust on our hands and start sorting out a consensus view of the business, and which in those meetings there can be conflict. Conflict is unavoidable, and conflict can be it's not necessarily bad. It's bad if we go, we all know what bad behavior is. But you're right, discovery and then wading in and creating alignment and all of the things. Those of you who are participating in the C3D course, you'll hear this message amplify as you go deeper into the course, that some people will agree to disagree. Some people will come to a collaborative understanding. And there are some people who will vote themselves off the island or need to be voted off the island. In fact, fantastic point, Joe. Thank you.
Joe, I'd just add to your and George's comments, discovery and growth and excellence by their nature are iterative processes. There is no way to perfectly discover everything at the start in every single possible way that would affect every single possible path you're going to go down. So you have to look at it, to your point, Joe, you have to get into it. And at least in my experience, you often won't change the client's mind in the discovery phase either. You need to go farther in, and they need to see that place where I see what you meant when you said this won't go with that. Now that we're up against it and I got to make the choice, now I understand, and now I can go back and convince them, and now we can go forward again, right? And so I do think there's an iterative aspect to it, and there's an aspect to it that says if you try to get everything perfect in the discovery phase, you'll never get out of discovery.
Yeah, I think that's where people get lost. I know when I owned my businesses, I would get lost there. I call it, diving. Like entrepreneurs, we want to solve the problem like fast. So as soon as we identify one, down the rabbit hole we go. But to stay elevated, so what I'm hearing you say, Eric, is it's the what, not the how. Let's identify the what's that we think are issues that we're going to want to figure out at some point. That doesn't mean let's keep the conversation up here though, and not go down the rabbit holes until we've identified a sufficient amount of what's that we could then have reasonable conversation about priority.
Right. The perfect example of this that I get all the time is we've got a cash flow problem. Eric, you're a financial guy. Come in and fix the cash flow problem. My answer is, of course I can fix the cash flow problem. We'll draw on your line of credit. We can fix the symptom of the problem and fix your cash flow. But finance doesn't cause cash flow problems. Sales and operations cause cash flow problems. We actually have to peel the onion to actually fix the problem and go find out where is the problem. Is it sales? Is it operations? Yeah, maybe finance is contributing to it and they're not collecting the receivable in a timely basis. But really the problem wasn't created there. We sold the customer something they're not willing to pay for. So yeah, finance is working really hard to get them to pay, but that's not the real problem. The problem is that we're selling them shit they don't want to pay for.
That's right.
And so let's go fix the real problem. And without peeling the onion a little bit, and to use your words, Greg, finding out a few of the what's, we're never going to get to solving the real problem. We're just going to be putting a Band-Aid on the symptom.
Yeah, heck yes.
Yeah, our pricing could be wrong, our margins could be wrong.
Our direction could be wrong.
Yeah, lots of stuff could be wrong.
Yeah, we find, guys, the biggest problem we find overall, and this is painful for business owners to hear, is a lot of problems come back to a strategic alignment. A lot of problems come back to we've got a business owner who has shared only 20 or 30% of what's going on up here, and the rest of their team doesn't understand. And the simplistic example I always give to people is the last 3 times you told somebody to go out and get you, lunch, you asked for a hamburger, and so they went out and get you a hamburger. And then today you yell at them for bringing you back a hamburger because you wanted chicken. How would they know that you wanted chicken today? Because you told them a hamburger the last 3 times, right? Like, that's an alignment. You're not communicating. You're communicating tasks. You're not communicating what do I want. Hey, on Thursdays, I always eat chicken. So if you would looked at the calendar and known that it's a Thursday, you would have understood I eat chicken. Well, they didn't know that, right? Like, so we gotta peel the onion a little bit to understand what the bigger problems are. And we often find that the problem is much deeper than the superficial symptom that's being told to us.
Eric, can I just take that? I love that analogy, because what everyone on this call does is to say, hey man, let's use that hamburger. What's your ultimate goal? Well, obesity has been a problem in my family, and what I want to do is I don't want to go down that road, so I want to run a marathon in 12 months. Okay, so that's your vision. Yes. Okay, great. You're going to run a marathon because you want to live longer. Very cool. Now to run a marathon, what do you need to do? Well, you're going to need to run. You're going to need to eat better. Now, if you haven't communicated to people that your family dies young, that you want to be able to run a marathon to help, for a variety of reasons, and therefore you're going to start eating better. Now they understand that a burger is like, I love burgers, but a burger might be the worst thing they can feed you, and maybe chicken salad on a salad. Go with it. So heck yes, Eric. Everybody just shifted. I'm like, Eric, you're now in the middle.
Yeah, I know. I think strategic alignment is an interesting thing because you could, voice it or talk about it in different ways. Oftentimes the owner it's a symptom of micromanaging. They're trying to do everything. Yeah. They're not willing to set the destination and then give ownership to the path to their people. And they're missing out on, and then they get shitty execution. They wonder why. Yeah. Everybody's probably on this call's heard of the, I think we call it the buy-in equation, but basically it's quality of idea times buy-in equals execution. So if I think that I've got the 100% best idea and I try to shove it down your throat as my team member, without any kind of collaboration or, you being able to put your thumbprint on it because you're the one who has to do it, you might have very low buy-in. And even though I think I've got the best, you might have 30% buy-in, so I get 30% execution. But if in my perspective, your path to get there is 80%, it's good, but it's not as good as me. No one can do as good as me as the owner. But if you're 100% bought in, that's a way different, execution model. And I think execution, kills. That's how you win. It's an execution. Yeah. It doesn't have to be perfect.
I love the implications as to culture there, Greg. That's cool. I just typed that into the quality of idea times buy-in equals execution. I absolutely love that. I don't know who got their hand up first there, Silvana and Steve. Fire away.
Okay, so I love that we're talking about the strategic alignment, and I love what we're talking about because it falls in several different areas. The way that I have profiled our target clients is that they have team members within the organization that are decision makers, which are target. But a lot of the people that provide input and they're part of the decision are outside of the organization. So the way that I have personally in my value growth quarterback program, the way that I have set up the alignment is that to me, there are two types of alignments. One is what we address at the strategic alignment and strategic roadmap activity, which is this is your clarity results, this is where you are based on your baseline, and this is where you want to be, and here it is a roadmap how to get there over the next year, for example. And at that point, everybody, so there is the buy-in, and I love what Greg said, and everybody says, hoorah, we're going for it. And then in my program, I've divided it into parts, which is the first one, front end. You say, everybody, okay, we're in. And then when the execution comes, that's where a problem sort of arises. Because I think that when it comes to execution and being busy into the nitty-gritty details of operations, a lot of decision makers don't have the staying power and the accountability and the brain space to actually ensure that all the levers, all the decision makers, all the brain trust within their that affect the results, the outcomes of their strategic plan work or the execution are still aligned, are still their output. I'm a process person, so input output systems, somebody, if your tax accountant or your accountant or your fractional CFO or anybody that is not coming to, is part of your, W-2, they're outside of organization, if their outputs actually affect your strategic plan and the total output of your organization, you need to figure out a way how to align that in a continuous basis and accountability to make sure that the ball is not dropped. So I have the strategic alignment and I have the tactical alignment as part of the work in order to make sure that ultimately in the end, we get where we need to be. So that's how I've gone it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Silvana. We talk about inboard, outboard, the inboard, outboard team, and inside the software and inside the methodology, we talk about aligning employees and consultants and advisors, everyone, because this is a gig economy. That's a fabulous point. Thanks, Silvana. Steve, and then Tim, and then guys, I think let's do key takeaways. Steve, fire away, man.
Well, the problem with some of these discussions is if you wait in line to jump in, then what you're responding to was 5 comments ago. So here's a silly example. It just so happens I wrote a LinkedIn post this morning, and everything in life you can draw an analogy to something in business. And the gist of it goes back to something that Eric and others were talking about. Eric, I think, was the last one. So my little LinkedIn post was about me taking a walk on the Greenway one day, and there was a snake hanging out of the bird box. And anyway, the moral of the story is, don't just go poking your hand into an open hand because you might get open hole because you might get bitten. And I dropped back. I made the analogy to your financial numbers and the point that Eric was making there. Make sure you're dealing with the actual issue, so you have the proper information before you make a decision. Otherwise, you might get bitten.
Ask. Yeah. Tim, man, fire away.
You're muted, Tim.
Muted, my man.
If I could change the subject for a second, I was on a call with George yesterday talking about this. I'm in the process of building my first deck to introduce the concept of growth drive to prospects and COIs. And I was curious if anybody has any examples or if anybody would be willing to share anything that they've got. I want to do as few slides as possible and just walk people through from the initial thought of I want to maximize the value of my business to here's the path that we take to get there. So if anybody has anything that they found that works well or any tips or comments or anything, I'd appreciate it. We don't have to do it right now, but I just thought I'd throw that out there before we hit the end of our leash here at 10:30.
And Tim, something that you just said caused me to think of our process slide, right? We talk about CEO clarity, team clarity, alignment, strategic analysis, planning, and execution. You see my hand going down, but I'll make sure you have that. That slide is in graphics in the community, and I will make sure I will send you a copy of it, because one of the things that it came out of our we booked half an hour, ended up talking for an hour. Thank you, Tim. It was a great conversation. Was the 9 points, the 7 points. This is what, or that draft, like this is what we do as advisors. Goes back to Eric's, this effort that Eric has launched. Thank you, Eric. about, what does it mean to be a growth advisor? What does it mean? What is our promise to the market? And frankly, I'm happy to share that slide as well. I think you have it, Tim. You said you printed it out.
I did, and I'm halfway through C3D and loving it. The problem isn't that there isn't enough information; it's that there's an abundance of it, and so I'm just wringing it out a little bit to come up with, what are some of the primary points that I'd like to make in a way that whoever I'm sitting with or doing a quick Zoom call with in 10 or 15 minutes could go, that sounds like exactly what I need. Let's talk. Right? That's really where I'm trying to get with them.
Tim, I'd be happy to do a half an hour call that turns into an hour also and kick it around with you.
Great.
My simplistic answer to it would be, I ask customers if they want to know the value of their business, they always say yes. And then I say, hey, wouldn't it make sense for us to understand what's making that value more valuable and what's making it less valuable? And they say, yeah, of course I want to have that. And we're not. Like, that's the conversation, right? And so being overly simplistic, but they get that the assessment part helps them understand how to make the value more and right? It's the knob you turn.
Absolutely.
I don't have a specific deck for it, Tim, but I would encourage you to think about it in terms of messaging that resonates. So, and this also applies to being able to communicate to your COIs. So what is it that their business owner, clients and prospects are likely to say that should perk up their ears that, oh God, that's a Tim intro. And so I would think about the pain of not getting this done. I would want to connect it to personal, and I'd want to figure out a way to talk about it that would be in lay people's terms, not in all the technical jargon that we have inside of this community, so that it's, and so the ebook that you took a look at, I have those 3 problems. I find that resonates, and you could, I could have one short phrase for each of those, or I could expound on it. But, I own a job, not a business, have all my financial eggs tied up in the business basket, and trying to solve those first 2, I over-sacrifice on the personal, family, and health front. And there's different ways of saying that. But ultimately, even though, we're firmly in the business advisory seat, the business is the goose that lays the golden eggs. It makes everything else possible for a business owner. And realizing that there is no clear delineation between their personal life, their family life, their business life, financial life, etc., just meets them where they are on it. And the better you can resonate with that in your own terms, the way that you talk, and build that into, your deck, like, hey, here's what I actually do. Like, people work because they have these issues. They're sufficiently broad enough that a lot can be encompassed underneath there, and I don't necessarily need to get into the weeds of it.
Yeah.
Because it's next step selling, right? So what is your next step? I think we also overcomplicate it as advisors, trying to get really complex about our ability to solve issues. And we go 4, 5, 10 steps down the road when we don't need to. So if your next step is clarity 1, then what is the easiest, simplest, quickest path to gain some buy-in and get them to clarity 1? And then we'll take care of the rest of it after that.
Greg, I love that answer, man. And Tim, as you'll see in C3D, when you get to class 15, and we'll talk about the 5 Ps of facilitation. Steve, and those of you who've been through our facilitation, our Fearless Business Advisor. But Greg, you're hitting on there, which I love, is the product. What is the product of the meeting? And going into the meeting with a very clear understanding of what we need, what the meeting must produce. And then everything we do in that meeting, once we get our product, don't stick your hand back into the bird box. We get our product, and that was what we were there to accomplish. And now it could be that the client says, "Hey, I'm going to clear my calendar and I want to do clarity 1 now." Cool, we got our product, and heck yes. But Greg, thank you for amplifying that 5 Ps of preparation: product. Guys, we're right at the bottom of the hour, so I have to scoot. Is anybody, you're going to stay on, or does everybody think that we've had a great conversation? We got to scoot. The guys, fantastic, wide-ranging conversation. Here's one quick question, show of hands. Would it be okay if I put your @ in the community when we post the Klatsch, we put the @ symbol or your @ symbol as people who are on this call? Is that okay? Everybody okay with that? Okay, great. I figured, okay, well, you just voted for the whole community. Let it be so. Awesome, guys. Listen, have a great week. If I can help in any way, you know how to reach me. Okay, fantastic.
Thank you,
guys.
George.
Thank you. I'll see you around.
Bye, guys.
This episode is brought to you by the Growth Drive Summit, Our theme this year is building a profitable advisory business. Join us in Charleston, South Carolina, October 6th, 7th, and 8th. Expand your network, learn new skills, and generally have a good time. This is a top-rated event. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.